Joe knows taxes.
Joe knows the market.
Joe knows Social Security.
Joe knows income planning.
Joe knows pickleball? No.
This is Joe Knows Retirement.
One question we get very often is, how much do I need to retire? I looked online and it says if I have $1 million, I may not be able to retire. Is that true or is that false? Well, stay till the end here and we're going to give you the answer if that is true or false, and how much do you need based on your situation to truly retire and enjoy it. So let's start off the conversation by understanding how much do we need to retire. So first thing it comes to is, how much do you need to live on? Because if we have how much you need to live on, now we can calculate how much we need in assets or income to get to where we need to go. So let's just use an example that as we walk through this question of, I need $8,000 a month to live on, which is about $100,000 a year to live on. And so if that's you, that's the number we're going to use as we walk through this, and then you can just use your number relatively if it's higher or lower to follow along. So again, first is determine how much you need to retire. If you have less you need to retire, you're not going to need as much saved. If you need $20,000 a month to live on, all right, we better make sure we've got some good savings there to supplement that. So the way I always joke with people is, hey, do I have enough to retire? Anyone can retire is what I say. If you want to live in a cardboard box and you eat ramen noodles every day, you don't need anything. You don't need any money to retire. You can go retire tomorrow and you're good to go. The problem is that, not necessarily it's a problem, but most people just don't want to live like that. Most people want to enjoy their retirement. They want to travel, spend time with grandkids. They want to live in comfort and luxury and enjoy it, right? And that's totally fine, but we need to make sure that we have a plan and know how much we can expect to spend to be able to do what we want to do in retirement. So that's the idea. So the first thing I want to see us do is understand Social Security. How much Social Security are we going to need or get in retirement, right? And then also understanding that when you take Social Security is to determine how much you're going to get from Social Security. So you could take Social Security anytime between 62 and 70. And so if you take it at 62, you're going to get a much lower benefit. First, if you take it at 70, you're going to get a higher benefit. And so for the example we're going to use today, we're going to look at someone who has about a $3,000 a month Social Security check at full retirement age. And they're going to get about $2,000 a month if they take it at 62. So that's typically the number. It's not perfect, but if you were to take it at 62, you're going to get about $1,000 less in that example. Versus if you were to take it at 70, you could actually get around $4,000 a month. So you could go from $2,000 at 62 to double it if you waited till 70. Now, what's the negative of doing so? You go with 8 years without payments. Now, it could be worthwhile, but we have to understand that that is a risk there. So let's just say that for this couple here, they took it at 70. And so if they took it at 70, they're going to get about $4,000 a month. And so as I've already shared, they need $8,000. They're already at $4,000 a month. That's not too bad. They've got half of their income covered from Social Security, right? That's only one of the Social Securities, though. Understand that the other spouse is also going to have a Social Security, and their Social Security benefit, just for example's sake, will be about $2,000 a month. So they're already $6,000 a month guaranteed income, and they only need $8,000 a month. So on paper, this looks really good. Now, one thing we're missing, though, is inflation, right? Inflation is a cost of need that we need to live on ongoing. And so what inflation says that if we get a 3% inflation rate on average, which has been historic average, if you need let's use $8,000 to live on today, in 20 years, you're going to need $16,000 of income to live on just from a 3% inflation. If we see a higher than 3% inflation, it's going to be even worse. So that's just something we want to consider. Now, again, the point of today is to make it simple, to give you an idea, but we'd always recommend you to get professional help to really run these numbers more in depth and more detail to make sure you are truly on the right path. But we're just trying to give a framework and an understanding of how you can decide how much you're going to need and how this all works together, just to make sure you're in the ballpark of how much you would need to save. So that's the situation there. So this couple has an option already. They could decide, hey, maybe I have no investments, I don't want to save any money. Well, they could just bring down their standard of living from $8,000 to lower. And if they can stay under the Social Security check that they have coming in every year, they could retire today and they'd be completely happy, right? They'd be able to live on just what's coming in. Now, they would have to risk if something bad happened, like an emergency or something. They may not have the assets or the leeway to plan for that, and so they could accumulate debt, or they would maybe have to go back to work. So those are some of the concerns or risks about that income planning if you have no cushion. And so we always typically want to see people with a cushion so they can have something to fall back on. The next consideration too is, do you have a pension? So we're not going to use the pension in this example because only 20% of people have a pension. But if you do have a pension, then that is going to be more income that you have. That's going to allow you to live on more money in retirement. And so we often see people with pension typically live pretty happy retirements. And this isn't to bash on people if you don't have a pension. It's just to emphasize that if you do have a pension, it's an awesome opportunity. And we have another YouTube video and podcast on this topic. Our most watched YouTube video is actually on this conversation of how much is a pension worth. And I think it surprises people of how much a pension is truly worth. It's worth a lot of money when you really add it up and factor it into how it works within a plan. So for example, if you have a pension, let's say you have a $50,000 pension coming in every year, and you have Social Security on top of that, you got quite a bit of income already coming in that is guaranteed, and so you're going to be able to live on more money in retirement. So that's just to understand that, hey, if we have $100,000 coming in from Social Security and pension, and we can live on less than $100,000, well, we're probably in a pretty good situation. The only thing you have to understand with pensions is that some of those may not have those cost of living adjustments. They may not be adjusted for inflation, so you may just want to be aware of that. That if we need double the income in 20 years, like I explained earlier, a pension may not be able to keep up with the cost of that. So again, just one of the negatives of the pension, but understand it's a really good opportunity. So let's next talk about what most people have. And before we talk about, let's talk about real estate, right? So if you have real estate, you may have some rental income coming on that off of that. And if you plan to keep that real estate property and that rental income coming in, you could factor that into how much you have to spend in retirement to see if you're going to be able to reach your goals. Now, what we see with real estate and rental properties is, you probably want to make sure you have someone managing that at that point in your retirement. You may not have the energy or the wherewithal to really manage that. And so you either typically we see people sell it or they have someone manage it for them. And so if you sell it, you just have to use those assets and spit it out as income on your own ways. You wouldn't be able to rely on a monthly check coming in from that renter. But that's just something to consider. And so one of the other things we want to look at here is your investments, right? So we always tell people that, hey, when you retire, you go from having a big income to no longer having an income at all. As we've already discussed, you may have a pension, you may have Social Security, but typically a Social Security benefit is only going to cover about 40 to 50% of someone's income in retirement is what the average is. And so if that's the case, we've got to find a way to get the other 50% to live on. And where does that come from? For most people, it comes from their investments. And so what we typically see with their investments is we follow a typical rule. It's not perfect, but it's a pretty good idea. It's called the 4% rule. And what the 4% rule says is that you can take out 4% from your investments and it will likely last you for the next 30 years. Now, some people prove this 4% rule to be false. Other people prove it to be, hey, you can take out way more than 4%. For our clients, we feel very confident with the type of planning we do and the way we structure our income plan that we don't feel 4% is outside the realm of possibility to get. We feel very confident about that. And we feel very confident that some of our clients could even get more than that, depending on their risk tolerance and if they're willing to be smart about how they withdraw money, and maybe they take out more money when the markets are up, or maybe the markets are down, they look to take out less. Sometimes that can really expand the amount you can pull out over time. So we'll just use the 4% rule just for example's sake here today, though. And so let's say you have $1 million in that tax-deferred investment. Well, the 4% rule says that you can take out about $40,000 from that investment, and it's going to last you for your lifetime is ultimately the idea. And so if you factor in your Social Security plus your 4% rule plus your any pensions, that's going to be a pretty generous amount there that you have to live on. Now, the problem comes with your investments is when planning for that for income on how much you need to retire is it predictable? If you have $1 million and it's all in the stock market, well, in 2022, the stock market was down about 20%. So your $1 million is now worth $800,000, and now you're not able to get as much income from your investments that year. Or in 2008, right, when the market was down, some investments were down 40, 50, 60, even more than that. Now you're seeing half of your account value, your $1 million turns into $500,000. And if you're expecting to get $40,000 a year, you're now taking a huge withdrawal rate early in retirement, all because the market went down. And so that's something we really have to plan for, that if you are planning to use your investments for income, we want to make sure we have an investment income plan is what we call it. And this is where we're going to make sure that any money that we need within the next 5 to 10 years, we want to see that protected. We want to make sure that there's no sequence of returns risk, which is what I just explained, which is taking out money during a down market. So think about it this way. When the market's down, that's one loss. And then when you also take out money, that's two losses. And then the question we always want to ask people is, do you have enough time to make up that double loss? And early in retirement, you don't want to see a double loss early in retirement, because now you're just always coming from behind moving forward. And so that's why we want to make sure that money we need early on is protected. And then anything that we're planning on needing for the long term, we want to still seek growth on that to keep up with inflation and rising healthcare costs, and to make sure we can maximize our portfolio over time. And if we know we're not going to need to touch that money for at least 10 years, well, now we can actually seek growth and buy time in something like the market or something that's more growth oriented to allow us to take advantage of those opportunities. So that's the idea there. The other thing to understand too is, where do most people have all their investments at? It's simply tax deferred. And tax deferred investments are things like your 401k and your IRA. And so what happens when you take out money from these? You've got to pay taxes. And so I always tell this funny story, but we had a guy come in and see us one time, and he had $1 million in his 401k. And he came in and he said, Joe, I've done really great up to this point, and I'm ready to retire. And I said, that's great. Let me see your statement. He showed his statement very proudly, of course. He showed his name. He showed $1 million. And I looked at him with a little grin, and I said, this is great. You're definitely looking good for retirement, but you don't have $1 million. He goes, yes, I do. There's my name. There's a number. I said, you're missing something. I said, you're missing a name next to yours. Whose name is that? Uncle Sam. So we have to understand with these tax-deferred investments that it's not all ours. Uncle Sam is going to get a percentage of that when we take it out, or when he forces us to take it out at that required minimum distribution time, which could be either 73 or 75, depending on your age. And so if that's the case, how much is he going to get? How much of that tax-deferred investment is his? And I always pause here and ask people that, because no one knows the answer. Because it's whatever the government wants to make the tax rates. And my question to you is, what tax rates do you think they're going to make these in the future? Are they going to make them higher or lower than our current tax rates? And if you think they're going to make them higher, well, that means we have to plan for less money in our tax-deferred investments unless we get plenty now with tax planning. And so that's something you really have to factor in, is that it's not how much you take out of your investments in retirement, it's how much you keep. And so we have to make sure that we take out and keep almost all of it and not pay as much in taxes to Uncle Sam if we can avoid and do so in a legal way to make sure that we can reduce our tax burden over time. So when looking at that investment, again, look at that 4% rule, but also make sure you understand how that works from a standpoint of not only are you taking 4%, you may take out 4% of that $1 million, which is $40,000, but how much of that is going to taxes? And what if that market is down? You may not be able to get that $40,000. So we need the right kind of planning in place through tax planning and through income planning to make sure our investments are protected, secure, stable, so that we can make sure we can have more predictability moving forward in our income plan, so we know how much we can spend versus letting the market decide how much we can spend. It's kind of like flipping a coin, right? Do you really want to go into retirement and flip a coin and say, all right, if it's heads, I'm going to be good to spend money this year. If it's tails, the market's down and I can't spend money. I don't know if that's the most convenient and comfortable plan, with considering you've spent the last 30, 40 years of working, but obviously it's your plan and you can decide what you want that to look like. So let's tie all these things together then to decide, are we good to retire or not? So I've used that example of our friend who had an $8,000 a month need, which is about $100,000 a year. They had a $4,000 Social Security check for one spouse. The other spouse was $2,000 a month. Now, the problem is, though, is that those Social Securities aren't going to start until age 70. It is what we plan during the plan. Again, it's not a recommendation. It's just for them. That's what we decided was the best thing. They've got $1 million, and they're retiring at 65. So what this means is they're going to go from 65 to 70 without any income, without any Social Security. All of their income has to come from their investments. And so when they came to us, they asked us, hey, are we good? And what we actually told them is, hey, it's a little tight. we feel confident that things are going to go well, especially with the growth over time. And with you deferring your Social Security till 70, you're going to have a guaranteed amount for a longer period of time. But this is something we're really going to have to make sure we have our planning really set and good to go. And so what we did is retire at 65, which meant we needed about $100,000 a year from our investments. So by the 70, we depleted about half of their investments. So their investments are now worth $500,000 when they reach 70. And then now they have Social Security, they have the spousal Social Security, and now they have $500,000 to withdraw from in retirement. So based on all the calculations, the 4% rule, the Social Security amounts, they will have enough to retire comfortably and do what they want, but it's pretty close. It's not a perfect situation. And so the way we really want to make sure this is maximized for them is we need to make sure that we get enough protection early on, because if we have $1 million and we're going to withdraw $500,000 over the next 5 years, if the market goes down really at all, they're going to be in trouble. So we really had to make sure that that money was protected while still getting a reasonable rate of return to keep up with inflation, to really have that withdrawal strategy work. And then at 70, they're going to be left with $500,000, plus they have their $6,000 a month from Social Security. We feel that we can pull out from that $500,000, knowing it's going to get some more growth over the next 5 years, and pull from that and be comfortable throughout retirement. Now, one of the other options we gave this couple, which is actually what they did, just for more so fun, is we said, hey, if you were able to work part-time in retirement, that's something we haven't talked about today, it's going to make your situation just look a little bit cleaner. And so for each of them, they each just went and got part-time jobs, and they each made $1,000 a month. It doesn't sound like much, but it's huge from an income planning standpoint. Now, for those first parts of retirement, we were able to take out 25% less from their investment. So remember how I said we were planning on taking out $100,000 a year? Now we only had to take out $75,000 a year over the next 5 years. That saves us $125,000 that we will have to withdraw, and allows us to have more in our nest egg as comfort and peace of mind moving forward. And so they also like to do that because it gave them something to do. It gave them some purpose. It got them around people, gave them some tasks to do, kept them active. And so they really enjoyed doing that. And they also enjoyed doing things that they were on them flexible times, so they didn't have to have set schedules and get up at 5 a.m. every day. So that was something that they really liked. And so that also, to the point of how much do you need to retire, well, if you plan on working the rest of your life, you're good to go. You're not going to retire, right? But some part-time work in the future can also allow you to, have more to spend, or just have some more peace of mind and comfort as you build out that retirement plan. So to summarize, how do you know how much you need to retire? First, start off with how much you need to retire, and then you kind of back into it by understanding how much your Social Security is going to be. Do you have a pension? How much are your investments? Take out the 4%. Are you going to work part-time or not? And then when you add all that stuff up, you have to see, is it more or less than how much you need to live on in retirement? And if it's much more, you should feel pretty confident. If it's much less, you may have to keep working a little longer. You may have to make sure you live on a little less in retirement. You may want to start saving more. And so that's how you can get a ballpark idea of where you sit today. Now, again, just make sure you understand that this is not specific recommendations. This is just a high-level overview. With all of our clients, we run much deeper analyses, but this at least gives us a ballpark to see, are you in the right ballpark or not? And, do you need to do more saving, less saving? Are you good to retire now? Because what we see from a lot of people is they think they have to work forever, but really they don't. They don't need more money. They just need a better plan to make sure they can live that retirement they want, so they don't run out of money. So for some of our clients, it's like, you don't have to keep working if you don't want to. You have enough money to retire today comfortably based on what we've just discussed. So that's just the hope for you there if that's you. And hopefully you can continue to stay tuned to this video so you can find other ways to make sure that you are good to go in retirement, so you can have that better plan. Because most people we see who listen or watch our videos or listen to our podcast, they've saved enough. It's just a matter of getting that better plan. So hopefully these videos can be encouraging for you to make sure you can live that retirement that you've been dreaming of. And we will see you on the next episode of Joe Knows Retirement.
Since we do not know your specific situation, none of this information can serve as tax, legal, insurance, or financial advice, and may be outdated or inaccurate. The information comes from sources believed to be reliable but cannot be guaranteed. This content is prepared for educational purposes only. If you need advice, please contact a qualified CPA, attorney, insurance agent, financial advisor, or the appropriate professional for the subject you would like help with. Peak Retirement Planning, Inc. is an Ohio-based registered investment advisor and able to offer advisory services in Ohio and in other states where registered or exempt from registration.